Good morning, everyone. Welcome to part 6 of 20 of our artist series. Today, we're talking about Joshua Vides. We're going to break down his first 10 cards from 10 all the way to 1 and figure out right now what is my favorite card at the moment of Joshua Vides. Let's get to that and more in 1 second. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Chris, otherwise known as @CRT Sportscards on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to continue this conversation, follow us on Facebook. The group is CRT Sportscards. But here we are, Joshua Vides in part 6 of our artist series. And when I think of Joshua Vides in the current format of Project 2020, I think about what could have been. When we look back to this project in 5, 10 years, maybe even next year, when you think of what the artist could have done, when you see him take a white building and add his lines, add his dots, and what it looks like afterwards, I can only imagine what his cards would have looked like if they would have been whitewashed. Basically, he'd taken the same image, whited it out, and then added his lines to it. His collection could have been one of the best in Project 2020. But unfortunately, he's only done a little bit of that work on the cards when it comes to the lines and the dots. He's outlined the players and added some dots on some cards. And to a degree, it's worked. When you think of his 11th card, we're not going to talk about this on this video, but his Mike Trout, which mainly is Mike Trout's white jersey, it actually works out pretty well. But then when you think of like a Nolan Ryan card of his, where the background's very busy and very dark, it doesn't work as well. So ultimately, that is why I think of Joshua Vides and go, if I just look at his Fendi stuff, I look at his clothes he puts out, his designs, if those were his baseball cards in all white with black lines and black dots, this could have been the best 20 card run in Project 2020. But here we are, we don't have it. We have it a little bit on certain cards, but let's take a look at his print runs and then let's break down his first 10 cards and rank them 10 to number 1. Now, when it comes to the library right now of Joshua Vides, his first 2 cards were Ricky Henderson and Goodin. They are some of the lowest printed cards in the set. 1221 for Ricky and 1001 on the Goodin. His 5th card was the Nolan Ryan that came out with Griffey on Bubble Day. It's nearly 65,000 copies sold. His then 6th card was Jackie Robinson at 20,219. And his most recent card was at Don Mattingly at just 3,550. So we're trying to do some quick math there. Total cards for Vides on his first 10, 111,136. Unfortunately, almost 85,000 of those cards printed are in 2 cards, his Jackie and his Nolan Ryan, and so the other 8 are about 25,000 cards produced. But taking a look at his bottom 4 cards, in my opinion, and also I am joined today with a list from Hollis, who is at bsauce33 on Twitter. So thank you, Hollis, for this list. And these are in no particular order, but I have Nolan Ryan, Tony Gwynn, Ken Griffey Jr., and that Mariano Rivera. Also, when you look at Hollis's list, we have 2 cards that match up here, the Mariano and the Ken Griffey Jr. But also in his bottom 4, he has Mattingly and Koufax, which are not in my bottom 4. There are no notes on these 4 cards from Hollis. But when I look at these 4 cards as a group and I think about maybe what could have been or how could they have improved in different ways with his current structure, on the Mariano, if he had just had more lines on the card or more dots, I think it'd have been a really cool looking card. This card benefits from having a very white background and light blue where Mariano is standing. So I think it could have been really, really good, but there was just too much plain area in the card for me to really like it. On the Griffey and the Ryan, both of these cards suffer with, from my perspective, on having too dark a background to really make his artwork stand out. If they were whitewashed or whited out, I think these could have been really, really good. But his line work and his designs just totally get lost in those cards. And then on the Tony Gwynn, the funny part with this card, not really funny part, but it came out right after Natural's number 40, Tony Gwynn. And when you look at those 2 cards, they're very similar together or next to each other. The Vides gets lost, and there's not, to me, that strong of line work on this card. Yes, there are lines coming from Gwynn. I don't think it's a bad card overall. I don't think it needs improvement. Maybe like the Mariano could use more lines. I just think it gets lost in the shuffle when it comes to the recent Tony Gwynn by Natural at card 40. Now getting to the actual numbered cards. On my list for number 6, I do have Vides's Sandy Koufax and Hollis has that Nolan Ryan. He says the Nolan Ryan would have been in the bottom 4 if not for the iconic nature of the card in the overall set. As we talked about, this is the card that came out with the Griffey Shore. So this card is historic and why it's number 6 on his list. I think this card really, really cool. I like the yellow background. Obviously, he didn't design the yellow background, but I think his line work works well with this card. He didn't need to change it for any reason, but it wasn't one of the best cards, but it was better than the bottom 4. Coming in the 5th spot on my list, it is going to be his Dwight Goodin, one of the lowest printed cards in the set. And then on Hollis, he has that Tony Gwynn. He liked the addition of the yellow-green area on the card. He thought it fit an 80s rookie card or an 80s style card very well with Vides' style. But then on me, on the Goodin, I did like the addition of maybe the clouds or the background images on the card overall. I mean, it was good, but here again, this card lends itself to being favorable for Vides because of the light blue background. Now coming in the 4th spot, just outside the top 3, I have his Ricky Henderson, and then Hollis has that Willie Mays. Hollis's notes around Willie Mays is it really pops, it really stands out, and I couldn't agree more because as of right now, Willie Mays I have not talked about on my personal list for top 10. On the Henderson, yes, it is a little bit darker than other cards, but I really like the line work here. I thought everything he added to the card was really nice, and when I look at the card, it feels vintage to a degree. It feels like the oldest card of his 10 so far. So I thought it was a great card, just not as good as one of his top 3 cards. Now, taking a quick detour before we get to the top 3 of this list, if this is the first time you're seeing me, thank you for watching the video. And if you want to learn more about Project 2020, I put out 2 videos a week around the happenings, the new cards release, print runs, all that good stuff, along with this companion series around the artist's first 10 cards. So hit that subscribe button so you are notified the moment I put a video out around Project 2020. Now coming in the 3rd spot, and this is where I think Joshua Vides for me really starts to shine. I have his recent Don Mattingly, and then Hollis has that Ricky Henderson. And his note around Ricky Henderson is you cannot appreciate the card until you have it in hand. And it's very similar to what I said. It feels vintage and it feels really good when you look at the card. And then for me on Mattingly, this card benefits from having Mattingly in basically a white jersey. I would just like to have it in more white, but I thought it was a really good example and a really good design around Vides' style overall. Now coming in number 2 on my list, it is that Willie Mays. And then for Hollis, it is the Jackie Robinson. So that only leaves 1 card for each of us. We'll talk about that here in a second. But on the Mays specifically right here, for me personally, when you look at the outline on the hat, the outline of the jersey, the dots in the background, to me, the dots on the background make the image of Mays stand out. And here again, Mays has a white jersey on and it really stands out. So when you think back to what could have been with the white and black card, this card is potentially the nearest we're going to get to it. And it just stands out so very well. And then on Hollis's note for the Jackie Robinson, he really likes the red background. He thinks this card could be number 1, but right now it is his 2nd card on the list. And now if you've been tracking at home, we have 1 card left on each of us. And for Hollis, it is going to be that Dwight Goodin. While he does say it probably is the busiest background of all of the cards, this is his favorite card of the set. So if it's his favorite card in the set, it has to be Vides' number 1. I thought it was a good looking card. It was in my top 6, but it was not near the top 3. And then for me, on my favorite card, this should not be a real surprise to anyone. This is the Jackie Robinson. Yes, it does not have a white or black background, but the red really lends itself to the dots in the background. And I think it's a very clean, simple design. When you look at Project 2020 down the road, and you think of cards that have held true to their original format, but yet have been changed a little bit, this is that card. This is a card that you can put up next to his original rookie card and also like Naturals, and these look all very similar, but with their own flair. But I'm really curious, our lists were not that similar. Obviously, him and I have different number 1 and different number 2 cards. Where did those cards fall on your list? What is your top Joshua Vides card at the moment as we have now passed the 50% mark with his set? Leave a comment below and let's get that discussion going around Joshua Vides. Hope you liked the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to hear more news and notes around me from my artist series or just Project 2020 in general, check out that plays on the screen right now.